been a while. It's been a while. Had some big changes around here. Some nice positive changes. So that's why I haven't been around. Hmm. Come on. Gotta get some vibes. Some lo-fi vibes. It's been a few weeks, obviously. I know you guys have missed me. And I really am, like, dying to get back to this book. But I'm, like, scattered brain. Because I found this whole other book. I gotta add it to our list of books to go through. About the Lenape. But it's like an earlier account. Which is like this whole bunny trail that I've been sucked into lately anyway. Because I just started taking classes to learn Lenape. So that's a whole thing. So I got this other book, but then I got this, and I have to finish this. I can't be starting other shit until I finish this. But I don't even want to do this today. I was listening to a lecture today. I gotta find this dude's name. He was a chief of the Delaware tribe, which everyone hates calling it the Delaware tribe because that's a colonizer name. I'm looking for my history. There we go. He gave a lecture at the University of Scranton. Curtis is his first name. I can't pronounce his last name. Oh shit. He's the co-founder and co-director of the Lenape Center in New York. The lecture he gave was on the forced removal of the Lenape people. The Delaware Tribe of Indians, which is a reservation in Oklahoma. I I don't know. I don't want to get too much into that because uh, brother against brother is just not good. My tribe just like has a hard time getting recognition, and I feel like, without saying too much, that it has a lot to do with like political reasons. So the last I known, the Delaware Tribe in Oklahoma on the reservation, they they won't acknowledge the Nanticoke Lenni-Lenape of New Jersey. And I don't know if that has anything to do with whatever deal or treaty they have with the government. I don't know. I don't know those things. And the federal government won't recognize us because they're like, if they were really Lenape, then they'd be on the reservation with the rest of them. And that's really like, there was a whole migration to the Lenape, and a lot of those people went different directions at different points in different periods. That's a whole other story. But the state recognizes our tribe, and I think Pennsylvania, it's like in their I don't know what the word would be. Their state politicians are discussing the recognition of the, I don't know the specific tribe name. I believe they're Lenape as well. I could have that wrong. But anywho, it's still a win. But the victory, the real huge victory, is when the federal government just acknowledges all the tribes. But the lecture I was listening today and listening to him, like he's not like in any of these political positions anymore, or he's not a chief anymore. He's retired. So I think his tone was different, and I think he has more freedom to express how he feels about things. It might just be political reasons. I don't know, because his tone today was his, like he said it like 5 times in that lecture. He's like, we're all over the place because we've all had to go different directions over this whole migration. So from starting point to ending point, all along the way, the Lenape either stayed or, well, not stayed, because a lot of places they didn't stay. But the thing is, with like my particular family, the branch that was in Delaware and the branch that was in South Jersey, there just happened to be free colored American communities at a time when, like, 1700s. So there was communities for them to go to and intermingle in that community, and there not be no problems. And that was the case with both the branches in my family. But for a majority of the Lenape who didn't die from diseases and murder, just over the course of a century, they got pushed farther and farther west through Pennsylvania and into Ohio. And then, there's branches off of this migration over the years. Some went up to Canada, some Illinois, down and like did a loop into Oklahoma. And obviously, like, the Lenape people who made it all the way to the reservation and then lived there the rest of their life and raised their children, and their children raised their children, like, and then you have me, whereas I have 2 out of 4 branches that are Lenape, and like obviously over all the generations of just being mingled in with the community, multiracial community, and marriages and all this, like, I'm obviously a much more watered down version, if you will, of those same ancestors. Obviously, they're a more preserved version because they were on a reservation and got to reserve their culture this whole time. Whereas people in my family had to find ways to uh, intermingle into the community and pretend to be either a white civilian or a colored American civilian, depending on how dark or light their skin was. Cut their hair and then practice all their traditions in secret. So it's just two different, very different paths in what happened in the overall story of the Lenape. And shame on anyone, right? Shame on anyone to exclude people based on how much blood or genetics are in their body, right? Because that's nonsense. That we can point back to the one drop rule. Like, this is just many different manifestations of like racism and exclusion that find its way through and still pokes his head up. And it's nonsense, really. Anywho, rant over. But I was listening to that lecture. That was a very, very, very good lecture. So good that there was a part in it that made me cry. Legit, I'm like driving, crying. It was so fucking sad. And that's I actually want to look that shit up. I want to look more into that story. I hate to be like a bummer and like look up sad, tragic shit, but I just follow where my heart goes and where my interest goes. And I've been learning Lenape too, by the way. So dum bum, my brain, wherever my dum bum goes. um, see, let's go to YouTube first. Oh shit. I got like a million different things running, so it's all slow. Um, Let me get off that. You guys are nosy. Also on the screen, I have Copilot up. AI. Everyone has their favorites, I suppose. Um, your boy is broke and balling on a budget. Um, and that budget is no budget. So it's like free with the fucking computer. So I've been playing around with it. Um, it's not as good as I've played around with the Chat GPT one time. I forget which version of it I played with. Um, and one other one. I think Google has one. I messed around with that for a little bit. And I would say this one is not as great as the other two. I was able to find, and I'm not really smart in this area, so that's like that says something, but I was able to find a bunch of flaws in this. But it is like a time saver because it I still got to like make my judgments about what I'm absorbing or discarding, but it gets me to the solution faster. It doesn't give me the solution, but doing it here versus like a million Google searches, like it just gets me there quicker. It's a vehicle, basically. I don't really put too much trust into it. Yeah, Curtis. No, let's do the universe. I just went to Scranton a few weeks ago. That was like a really scenic route. It took forever. It was like fucking 3 hours away. Three and a half. 3.5 hours. Uh, Lenape. There it is, right here. All right, this guy. Actually, I don't know how much of this I'm allowed to play. Um, this is real. Let's just call it promoting this lecture that I think everyone should go read. If you find anything that we're about to like look up and talk about on this stream tonight interesting, you should definitely go listen to this and check who this fellow is. Um, I'm gonna play it because they're going to say his name.
Okay, we're going to get started. If everyone can find a seat. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
And you guys can see.
I want to welcome you all to tonight's keynote lecture. My name is Julie Schumacher-Cohen, and I'm the Assistant Vice President
you can see,
for Community Engagement and Government Affairs here at
what
the
the title
University of
is, so
Scranton.
you guys can go look it up and hit it with a like. I'm gonna
Before we
like
get
it too.
further underway, I want to take a moment to acknowledge and honor the original inhabitants and nations of this land, the Lenape, the Munsee, the Shawnee, and the Susquehannocks. May we be ever mindful of their legacy and contribution.
The Susquehannocks, that's a colonized name as well. I can't think of it right now. Let's see. That was Europeans called them the Susquehannas. And the river is the Susquehanna River. There we go. Oh man. Oh, you know what? I misspoke. And that's why I have to eat my words right now, because it says it's a Lenape word for people of the muddy river, and the Susquehanna does look muddy as fuck. But it's my second favorite river, and me and my family explore it all the time. I fucking love that place. My first favorite river is the Delaware River, obviously, but the Susquehanna River is my fucking shit, man. What did the Susquehanna people call themselves? Andaste? There we go. It was given to them. Okay, so, but yeah, they called themselves Andaste. If I'm saying that right, I'm learning. I'm doing the Lenape. I'm learning.
See the Shawnee and the Susquehannocks. May we be ever mindful of their legacy and contributions, and commit ourselves to stewarding this. So we're very honored to have with us tonight Curtis Zunigha. Enrolled member of the Delaware Tribe of Indians in Oklahoma and co-founder and co-director of the Lenape Center in New York. And he is here to discuss with us the removal of the Lenape people.
It's not, no, I don't want to say I didn't like. It's not that I didn't like.
Learn from Curtis over the past year. He was first invited to the university.
I had like, you know what it is? It's not that I don't like it. It's new for me. It's new for me. Like when we're talking about a lot of like colonial characters, I've heard the story for 30 years from like the colonial perspective. So now that I'm learning my native language and I'm like trying to learn like the history from that perspective, I'm like hearing these stories from a different angle. and I have to address it.
We'd like for you people to leave now. No, it was in a theater of warfare. Just one story. But that's what we were going through. So it wasn't. But this is that time frame where we keep getting pushed away. No, going on in the bridge with, will be in warfare, discriminatory doers coming in, the native people away, and images, brain. That's what's going on with the Lenape people, and that's of Ukraine. What you read about and see on the news about the people of Ukraine, that's what's going on with the Lenape people, and that's a microcosm of native people all throughout the Americas. But ours is just one story. But that's what we were going through. So it wasn't Jeter and command. And that's broken up. Ohio, known as the Delaware, and along the like Schunberg, those places, towns, with the Moravian Church, helped them flee that river. I've been there a lot in Hutton.
Here we go. This is super sad. I'm sorry, but this is what we're researching.
I mentioned I've been there a lot. Beautiful area. I mentioned the town of Gnadenhutten. That's the name of a town that brings a horrible memory to our people. Because name of a town. That's a.
Sorry.
I mentioned the.
I wanna.
Town of Gnadenhutten. That's the name of a town that brings a horrible memory to our people, because during that time leading into and during and immediately following the Revolutionary War, there were still marauding bands of racist white people. Some history books mention one group, the Paxton Boys, kind of like some kind of a club. But these guys would ride around and indiscriminately murder Indians. You better not be seen, because they'll just kill you. And oftentimes attacked these Christian settlements. It didn't matter whether you were Christian or not. You were an Indian, you were hated, and therefore you better get out of here or we're going to kill you. They attacked this one settlement at Gnadenhutten, burned the village down, and gathered up the remaining Christian converts, took them into the stockhouse in that village, and murdered them all, man, woman, and child. And to save money on the musket shot, to save on using that lead shot, they took large wooden mallets and laid their heads down and smashed the heads of each and every one of them like melons. It's a horrible, horrible story, but I have to tell you that this happened. It wasn't until 1998, when I was the chief of the tribe, I was invited back to Gnadenhutten, and a grand apology was issued by the Moravian Church. We're sorry that under our watch this happened to your people. This is just one of many kinds of stories. Not just the Lenape, but so many others. But I'm here to tell a story that kind of brings us to where my tribe, Delaware Tribe, is. Now, again, that name Delaware.
Oh, this is an
Before the
interesting
Americans,
breakdown.
as I said, were the English. And there was
This is definitely an interesting breakdown. And because you're not going to hear the whole lecture on the stream, I just want to like say something real quick about this. Hold on, let me put this on there. Okay, that's going to be that. How many states are native names? So half the states are native names. Over 200 counties have native names. There are hundreds of rivers with native names. A lot of the big ones, Mississippi, Missouri, Ohio, the Susquehanna, the Potomac, a lot of the most famous ones, the most famous states, the most famous rivers, the most probably counties, like it's all native names. Or some later white evolved version of it. But what's interesting about the Lenape people is that they're called the Delaware Tribe, and as he like has tried to point out in this lecture, that's our colonizer name, and he's about to break down where the word Delaware even came from and how it's applied to our people now. But the Lenape people called themselves the Lenni-Lenape. Other tribes called them the Lenni-Lenape. And we had names for the Delaware River, for all these lands, Lenape Hoking. So it's interesting that most places it was cool and like the native name still lingers in the titles and in the names and stuff, but when it came to the Lenape people, like I don't know, it's like I guess a way to like help erase the identity.
English colonial governor Sir Thomas West,
I think
who
he was
had
with the
among his
Virginia.
titles of nobility. He was the third Lord de la Warre, W-A-R-R-E.
De
and
la
therefore
Warre.
that name was given to the River Valley and the native
De la
inhabitants.
De la Warre.
De la Warre morphed into Delaware, and that's where the name came.
De
we
la
were given
Warre.
the name Delaware.
De
So
la
there's
Warre.
cultural appropriation right there.
Which, yeah, I forget who the dude who named the Delaware River was with the Virginia Company, and I think it was before Maryland started their colony, which was a safe haven for Catholics. But the explorer had just went up to check out what was like beyond the Chesapeake Bay and the land beyond that, and he came to the Delaware River, and then he named it after someone else who had the title of De la Warre. So he named it the Delaware, or Delaware and eventually evolved to Delaware. And then that's what the English applied to the Lenape people.
Embracing who we are as a people, and that's where the name came. We were given the name Delaware, so there's cultural appropriation right there. Erasing who we are as a people, given a colonizer name. We're still, today, my tribe is Delaware Tribe of Indians. So we carry that colonizer name, but Lenape Ni, I am Lenape. Oops, sorry about that.
Lenape Ni. I've been so stoked about learning Lenape. Let's go back up here. Alright, so the Ganaden Hutton, Ohio, is known for a tragic... Let me get this music back going so I can be chill. Is known for a tragic event during the American Revolutionary War called the Gnaden-Hutton Massacre. On March 8, 1782, Pennsylvania militiamen led by Captain David Williamson killed 96 Christian Lenape people, including men, women, and children. The Lenape were pacifists and had been living in the I know how I fucking practice this. I know how to say that, and it's so easy. Moravian, I think. Moravian. The Moravian missionary village of Gnaden-Hutton. They were accused of aiding American patriots, although they had remained neutral during the war. The militiamen tricked the Lenape into surrendering their weapons and then imprisoned them overnight. The following morning, the Lenape were brutally murdered. The event is remembered as a dark chapter in American history and is commemorated at the Gnaden-Hutton massacre site. The Paxton Boys. The Paxton Boys, also known as the Paxton Boys or the Paxton Rangers, were a group of Scots-Irish frontiersmen from Pennsylvania, who formed a vigilante group in 1763. They are most infamous for their attack on the Conestoga people, a peaceful group of Susquehannock Indians. In December 1763, this event is known as the Conestoga Massacre. The Paxton Boys were motivated by a desire to defend themselves from indigenous attacks during Pontiac's War. They believed that all Native Americans were enemies and needed to be eradicated. Their actions were driven by a combination of fear, prejudice, and frustration with the Pennsylvania government's perceived failure to protect frontier settlements. After the massacre, the Paxton Boys marched on Philadelphia in January of 1764, intending to attack more Native Americans who had been moved to the city for their protection. However, they were met by a delegation led by Benjamin Franklin, who managed to defuse the situation and prevent further violence. I wonder why this is inaccurate. were a mob of settlers that murdered 20 unarmed Conestoga in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, December 1763. This group of vigilantes from Lancaster, criminals, racist predators from Lancaster and Cumberland counties formed in 1763 to defend themselves from indigenous attacks during Pontiac's War. What is that? Okay. The Paxton Boys justified their actions by claiming that the Conestoga were colluding with the Lenape and Shawnee, who were attacking Pennsylvania's frontier settlements. According to historian Kevin Kinney, the Paxton Boys were Pennsylvania's most aggressive colonists. In February 1764, the Paxton Boys marched on Philadelphia with the intent of murdering the Moravian. I don't know how to say that goddamn word. Lenape and Mohican, who had been moved to that city for their protection. However, the marchers dispersed at Germantown after meeting with a delegation headed by Benjamin Franklin. Members of the group led by Lazarus Stewart later supported settlers from Connecticut in the Wyoming Valley during the Pennamite-Yankee Wars and the Revolutionary War. The Paxton Boys were drawn from Scots Irish Presbyterians who lived in the Hill Country northwest of Lancaster and across the Susquehanna River in Cumberland County. Many of these settlers were squatters encroaching on indigenous territory. Squatters. That's what it should have been called, not vigilantes. Violent homeless immigrants. Coincidentally. Ha! That's a bit. That's a whole bit. Where is... Come on. Where? The Susquehanna? What is that? There it is, okay. This river right here. Safe harbor, okay. Oh, interesting. Let's see. Okay. Safe harbor. There's a dam up here somewhere. And there's an overlook. Okay, Indian Steps Museum. So is that where it is? Pinnacle Overlook. This is a dope place to check out. Where does Safe Harbor go? Oh, right there. Conestoga is up there. Oh, the Safe Harbor is on Conestoga River. Okay. Okay. Interesting. I love the Susquehanna River. There's so many cool places to explore. This town's pretty cool. Haverty Grace. Yeah. Which is named after a place in France. Lafayette named this place because he said this place reminded him of a place in France, I think. This island here, Garrett Island, you can actually, there's no rule saying you can't explore it. It's just a matter of getting there. And apparently there's a bunch of old industrial like buildings or houses or town. I don't know. It's supposed to be shit on there. Train tracks go across it now. Let's see. And then this is the Conowingo Dam. I've talked about this on the Birth Therapy Show. This is a whole interesting place. A lot of bald eagles there. It's really dope to hang out here. I take the kids there a lot. And then you come up here a little bit more into Pennsylvania. There's so many dams on here too. And then you got this place, which is really cool. It's like a old it's an old river river lock. There's an old furnace there too. It's not going to show the lock, but it's how they got boats up the river with back in the day. And then there's supposed to be what is this? Oh shit. Yeah, there's so much places to explore. And the Susquehanna fucking goes forever, man. Look, it goes all the way up past Lancaster, Columbia. This is a cool ass bridge. Columbia is a cool ass town too. Wrightsville is cool as shit. Accomack over here. This whole drive, and there's this old restaurant right here on the river. Super dope. But it goes all the way up. Harrisburg. Then it splits. I think it goes Wilkes-Barre. Jersey Shore. What the fuck? What? What is that? Pennsylvania? Is there a called Jersey Shore and PA? Yes, there is a town called Jersey Shore in Pennsylvania. It's a borough located in Lycoming County, along the West Branch Susquehanna River. Jersey Shore has a rich history and was originally named Waynesburg, but the name was changed to Jersey Shore in 1826. Why was the town's name changed? Jersey Shore. That's so crazy. The town originally named Waynesburg was changed to Jersey Shore in 1826 due to a bit of local rivalry and humor. The town was founded by two brothers, Reuben and Jeremiah Manning, who came from New Jersey. As the settlement grew, a neighboring community on the eastern side of the Susquehanna River began teasing the Mannings and their fellow settlers by calling their side of the river the Jersey Shore. The nickname stuck, and eventually the town officially adopted the name Jersey Shore. Wow. That's kind of cool. What in the fuck? Where does the Susquehanna River end? I just want to say Chesapeake Bay. I should have said, where does it start? The Susquehanna River ends at the Chesapeake Bay. It flows from its source in the New York State through Pennsylvania and finally empties into the Chesapeake Bay in Maryland. The river is one of the longest rivers on the east coast of the United States and plays a critical role in the Chesapeake Bay ecosystem. Destroying it, really. That's actually what makes the Delaware River just a little bit better than the Susquehanna. There's so many dams. How many dams are on the Susquehanna River? Watch this. One, two, three, four, five. There's more than that. Come on. Oh, this one's saying 4. How many dams are on the Susquehanna River altogether? There are many dams on the Susquehanna River, including hydroelectric dams, mill dams, and other dams. It's beating around the bush here. They don't want to tell us how many's on there because there's a lot of fucking dams on that river. And they're destroying the bay. Let's see. List of dams. The northern branch they didn't even put on there. Or is that the northern branch? Alright, let's just see what this one tells us. Otsego Lake. Okay. Alright. Anyway. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. But let's say, all right, 26, 25, 24. We'll take those away because they're not there no more. So anyway, there's a lot of dams on there, and it's definitely, how does the dams on the Susquehanna destroy the bay? And these are things that we got to think about when we're like pushing for alternative, cleaner energies, which I'm for. But a lot of times, like a lot of these alternative things, they're not just completely like a positive alternative. Like there are like a downside to them, and it basically boils down to like you're picking your evils. Like the Conowingo Dam is probably the one that's fucking it up the most. Ecosystem disruption, sediment and nutrient trapping. Pollution, trash is crazy. Nutrient pollution. Anyway, and then how long is what's the second longest East Coast river? The Potomac. Interesting. That makes sense, actually. This is why the Delaware is cool, though. Delaware's the longest free-flowing river in the East. What is the longest free-flowing river on the East Coast? Delaware. Okay. Oh, it starts in the Catskill Mountains. Catskill. Flows into the Delaware Bay. It's largely undammed. I wonder how many dams are on the Delaware River. I don't think there's any. How many tributaries does the Delaware River have? God damn, 216. Holy crap. Anyway, let's get back to what we were looking up earlier. How did we even get to the dams? Oh, because of the Jersey Shore. Anyway, that's pretty cool. No, that's too far. No. Oh, this is what I want to look up. Let's see what this is. It's 20 years later. Was the killing of 96 the Gaden Hutton massacre, also known as the Moravian massacre, was the killing of 96 pacifist Moravian Christian Lenape and Mohican Indians by U.S. militiamen from Pennsylvania under the command of David Williamson. See, that's how they should be talking about people. David Williamson was a mass murderer and colonial colonel in the Pennsylvania militia during the American Revolutionary War. He was born near Carlisle, Pennsylvania, and led American militiamen in the Gaden-Hutton massacre of the Moravian Christian Indian martyrs. 1782 at the Moravian Moravian. Man. Ohio County during the American Revolution. Due to their commitment to Christian pacifism, the Moravians did not take sides during the American Revolutionary War, which caused them to be viewed with suspicion by both the British and the Americans. As the Moravians were collecting crops, Pennsylvania militia encountered them and falsely promised the Moravians that they would be relocated away from the warring parties. Once they were gathered together, however, the American militia rounded the unarmed Moravians up and said that they planned to execute them for being spies. Charges that the Moravians rebutted. The Moravians asked their captors to be allowed to pray and worship on the night before their execution. They spent the night before their death praying as well as singing Christian hymns and psalms. 18 of the U.S. militiamen were opposed to the killing of the pacifist Moravians, though they were outvoted by those who wanted to murder them. Those who opposed the murder did not participate in the massacre and separated themselves from the killers. Before murdering them, the American soldiers dragged the women and girls out into the snow and systematically raped them. As they were being killed, the Moravians sang hymns and spoke words of encouragement and consolation. one to another until they were all slain. Encouragement and consolation one to another until they were all slain. Believing in non-resistance, they pleaded for their lives to be spared, but did not fight back against their persecutors. Moravian missionary David Zesberger declared the slain Lenape and Mohican as Christian martyrs, who are remembered in the Moravian Church. More than a century later, Theodore Roosevelt called the massacre a stain on the frontier character that lapse of time cannot wash away. The shrine to the Moravian Christian Indian martyrs includes a monument that was erected and dedicated 90 years after the Gannon-Halton massacre by a chief of the Christian Munsee tribe. The graves of the victims contain bones which were gathered by the faithful missionaries sometime after the massacre. It also includes a large Christian cross dedicated to the Moravian Munsee and Christian Mohican martyrs by a member of the tribe and descendant of one of the slain. With the site of the village being preserved, a reconstruction mission house and Cooper's house were built there. The burial mound is marked and has been maintained on the site. The village site has been listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Unami, that's like South Jersey, Delaware, the southern part of Lenape-Hoking. Okay, during the American Revolutionary War, the Lenni-Lenape bands, also called the Delaware of the Ohio country, and they were pushed to Ohio. It's crazy because Lenni-Hoking is Delaware. You can say it kind of I don't know if it's, I don't know enough to say it extends to the Chesapeake Bay. I know that Nanticoke, which our tribe now is the Nanticoke Lenni-Lenape. The Nanticoke was the folks who like hung out on the Chesapeake Bay. So the Maryland side, the Maryland state, but on the Delaware side of the Chesapeake Bay. And then all of Delaware, all of New Jersey, all of Manhattan, lower upstate New York, and west or east Pennsylvania. That was all Lenape-Hoking area, the land of the Lenape. They just slowly got pushed further and further west. They got pushed up into Pennsylvania and New York and like towards Canada and like pushed over, and they got pushed into Ohio. I believe one of William Penn's descendants with the whole scam, the walking scam. There's an actual name for this. The Walking Purchase of 1737 was a notorious land swindle perpetrated by the sons of William Penn, the founder of Pennsylvania, against the Lenape people. The Penn family produced a deed allegedly from 1686 claiming that the Lenape had agreed to sell a tract of land that extended as far west as a man could walk in a day and a half. The Lenape believed that the walk would be a leisurely stroll along the Delaware River. However, the Penns hired 3 of the fastest runners and had a straight path cleared through the forest. Only one of the runners completed the walk, covering an astonishing 55 miles. The outcome, as a result, the Penns acquired 1,200 square miles of Lenape land, an area about the size of Rhode Island. The Lenape felt honor-bound to fulfill what they thought their ancestors had agreed to, despite their frustrations and dissatisfaction with the way the walk was conducted. The aftermath, the Lenape were forced to move westward, and their displacement continued for many years. This event is remembered as a significant example of the deceit and exploitation faced by the Native American tribes during the colonial period. That's how, I said all that to say, that's how the Lenape got from Lenape hooking all the way out to Ohio country. And that wasn't even halfway through the migration period yet. The Muncie, I think that was the northern part of Lenape Hoking and like those folks in that area. So basically, the Muncie Lenape and the Unami Lenape were divided over which side, if any, to take into conflict. But throughout the whole American history, colonial history, the natives of all tribes always tried to stay neutral. They just felt like, damn, there's just nothing but wars going on around us. They always try to stay neutral. But like as we get to the Revolutionary War, when it's, are we on Britain's side or America's side, like they wanted to be neutral, but really they ended up going with who they thought would win or who they wanted to win. They went with whichever one meant that they would be able to stay in their homelands. And whichever side of the war seemed like it promised that more to them, that's who they supported if they got brought into the conflict. And the same thing happened with the French Indian Wars too, where that was really a war against Britain and France, and the natives tried to stay neutral on it, but it was basically like, well, which one of you winning is going to mean us getting to be in our home. And they bounced back and forth, really, and sometimes they were divided. But ultimately, majority of the natives went to the French side because the British just outright told them, like, you ain't getting shit. And that's why they ended up teaming up with France. Some Lenape decided to take up arms against the American colonials and moved to the northwest closer to Fort Detroit, where they settled on Socioto and Sandusky rivers. These Lenape, sympathetic to the colonists, remained at Coshocton, and their leaders, including White Eyes, signed the Treaty of Fort Pitt, which is, it says up here, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, with the Revolutionaries in 1778. Through this treaty, White Eyes intended to secure the Ohio country as a state to be inhabited exclusively by Native Americans as part of the United States. Hold that thought. Oh, it might even show this. A third group of Lenape, many of them converted Christian Muncie and Unami, lived in several mission villages in Ohio, led by David Zeisberger, and other Moravian Christian missionaries. From the Mid-Atlantic area, they spoke the Muncie and Unami dialects of Delaware, I don't know how to pronounce that word yet, language. These Christian Lenape, being Moravians, held to Christian pacifism. White Eyes, A Lenape chief and Speaker of the Delaware Head Council negotiated the treaty. When he died in 1778, reportedly of smallpox, the treaty had not yet been ratified by Congress. United States official never pursued it, and the Native American state was dropped. Years later, George Morgan, a colonial diplomat to the Lenape and Shawnee during the American Revolution, wrote to Congress that whites had been murdered by the American militia in Michigan. Many Lenape at Coshocton eventually joined the war against the Americans, in part because the American raids against friendly Lenape bands. In response, Colonel David Broadhead led an expedition out of Fort Pitt and destroyed Coshocton on April 19, 1781. Surviving residents fled to the north. Colonel Broadhead convinced the militia to leave the Lenape at the Moravian mission villages unmolested since they were peaceful and neutral. September 1781, British allied Native Americans, primarily Wyandot and Lenape, forced the Christian Native Americans and missionaries from the Moravian villages. They took them northwest towards Lake Erie to a new village called Captive Town on the Sandusky River. The British took the Moravian Christian missionaries under guard back to Fort Detroit, where they tried the two men on charges of treason. The British had suspected them of providing military intelligence to the American garrison at Fort Pitt. The missionaries were acquitted during the trial. The Moravian Christian Indians at Captive Town were going hungry because of insufficient rations. In February 1782, more than 150 were allowed to return to their old Moravian villages, such as Gaddon, Hutton, Salem, and Schoenbrunn, to harvest the crops and collect stored food they had been forced to leave behind. The frontier war was still raging. March 4th, 1782, the Pennsylvania raiding party of 160 Pennsylvania militiamen, led by Lieutenant Colonel David Williamson, marched toward Tuscarawas Valley, and on the morning of March 6th, they first saw Joseph Shebosh Jr., a Moravian Christian who was the son of a Welshman and Christian Munsee Indian woman. He was brutally murdered by the Pennsylvania militia, despite the fact that he pleaded for his life before them. After pressing on the cornfields, the Pennsylvania militiamen acted friendly with the Moravian Christian Indians to gain their trust. The Moravian Christian Lenape fed the American militiamen, who falsely promised them that they would take them to Fort Pitt, where they would be safe. The Indians were requested by the American soldiers to hand over their guns, which they used for hunting, and hatchets. Some militiamen, and that's what's crazy about them, keep mentioning that they took their guns or that they tricked them into handing them over. That's like the whole point is that they were pacifists and that they probably would have not even used those guns if they were in their hands while they were doing whatever they did to them. And that's something that should be noted way more than anything regarding the weapons in this whole story. The fact that they were pacifists, and even if they had a loaded gun in their hand, chances are, because of like the virtue and morale of the native and like their virtue and like how much that like meant to the natives, like if they were a pacifist, then they were a pacifist, and they wouldn't have probably done anything. That was just out of fear. Some militiamen went to the Moravian settlement of Salem, where they acted friendly to the Christian Indians and persuaded them to come to Gaddon Hudson. So there wasn't enough there. They went to a whole nother village and brought more in. When they arrived, the American soldiers bound all of the Indians and accused them of taking part in raids into Pennsylvania, even though the Moravian Indians, who held to the doctrine of Christian pacifism, disputed these false charges. The militia held a council and voted to kill them anyway, with the exception of the minority of 18 militiamen. After the Indians were told of the American militia's vote, they requested time to prepare for death and spent the night praying to God and singing hymns. They were held in two buildings, one for men and one for the women and children. While the Indians were worshiping, the Pennsylvania militia spent the night getting intoxicated on the Pennsylvania militiamen spent the night getting intoxicated on the communion wine they stole from the believers that they were about to murder. The next morning on March 8th, the militia brought the Christian Indians to one of the two killing houses, one for the men and other for the women and children. The American militia tied the Indians, stunned them with mallet blows to the head, and killed them with fatal scalping cuts. Refusing to take part, some of the militiamen wrung their hands and calling God to witness that they were innocent of the blood of these harmless Christian Indians. They withdrew to some distance from the scene of the slaughter. One of those who opposed the killing of the Moravian Indians was Obadiah Holmes, Jr. That name rings a bell. One Nathan Rollins and brother, who had a father and uncle killed, took the lead in murdering the Indians, and Nathan Rollins had tomahawked 19 of the poor Moravians. And after it was over, he sat down and cried and said it was no satisfaction for the loss of his father and uncle after all. While waiting to be executed, the Indians sang hymns and prayed, with many praying for their murderers. One example of their non-resistance was described in these terms. One soldier taunted an Indian by pretending to offer him his hatchet with the words, "Strike me dead." When the man answered, "I strike no one dead," the soldier swung at the Indian and chopped his arm away. All the while, the Indian kept singing a hymn until another blow split his head. That's what I mean. They were pacifists, and even if they had a weapon or an opportunity to do something about anything, they wouldn't have. One after another, men, women, and children were led out to a block prepared for the dreadful purpose, and being commanded to sit down, the axe of the butcher, in the hands of the infuriate demons, clave their skulls. Two persons, who were present at that time and who related to me the fearful story, assured me that they were unable to witness, but for a short time, the horrid scene. One of these men stated that when he saw the incarnate fiends lead a pretty little girl, about 12 years of age, to the fatal block, and heard her plead for her life in the most piteous accents till her innocent voice was hushed in death, he felt a faintness come over him and could no longer stand the heart-sickening scene. The dreadful work of human slaughter continued till every prayer and moan and sigh was hushed in the stillness of death. No sex, age, or condition was spared, from the gray-haired sire to the infant at its mother's breast. All fell victims to the most cold-blooded murder ever perpetrated by man. There lay in the undistinguished confusion, gashed and gory, in that cellar where they were thrown by their butchers, nearly 100 murdered Christian Indians, hurried to an untimely grave by those who had but 2 days before sworn to protect him. In all, the militia murdered and scalped 28 men, 29 women, and 39 children. 2 Indian boys, one of whom had been scalped, survived to tell the massacre. The militia piled the bodies in the mission buildings and burned the village down. They also burned the other abandoned Moravian villages. The militiamen had looted the villages prior to their burning. The plunder, which needed 80 horses to carry, included everything that the people had held: furs for trade, pewter, tea sets, and clothing. A few years later, Moravian Christian missionary John Heckwelder collected the remains of the Christian Munsee and Christian Mohican murders and buried them in a mound on the southern side of the village. Obadiah Holmes Jr., a militiaman who had opposed the Gaddon Hutton massacre, rescued one of the Lenape children whom he raised himself. Outraged by the massacre, the U.S. Congress granted them 3 town sites in 1785. We're probably going to end here. Well, here in a few minutes. Definitely went a lot longer than I wanted to, but it was good. Sorry about it being so sad. How did Jacob and Thomas escape? See, uh, I don't know when the date of this article is, but today there are three federally recognized Delaware tribes in the United States: the Delaware Nation, the Delaware Tribe of Indians, and the Stockbridge Munsee community. The Nanticoke Lenni-Lenape are recognized like on state levels. Not all tribes are even recognized on state levels either. Alright, we'll end it there. Thanks for hanging.